Now on BBC World, the increasing demand for water in India and the developing disaster of salt getting into the system in the final part of Villages on the Front Line.
A spectre is haunting the world. The livelihoods of nearly 1 billion people could be at risk. Desertification is on the march. Countries are consuming too much water. The land is being overburdened by too many people, too much livestock, and too many harvests. 2006 is the UN's International Year of Desertification. Worldwide, agriculture is using up fresh water faster than rainfall can replenish it. To make up the deficit, farmers are drawing on finite reserves of groundwater. Now these too are becoming exhausted. Worse, in coastal areas, some are turning saline. For as fresh water is removed, seawater seeps in through porous rocks to take its place. This man-made phenomenon is literally salting the earth, ruining crops and poisoning wells. In our final programme of the series, we go to the Indian state of Gujarat, where more than 1,000 villages are in the front line against the salt invasion.
All over the world, seawater is intruding on coastal land at an alarming rate. Here in Gujarat on the Arabian Sea, the saline water is advancing on what was fertile agricultural land at a rate of half a kilometre per year, affecting the livelihoods of over 1,000 villages.
Padma Damodaran works with poor communities to raise awareness of rural issues. A former business correspondent for the Times of India, she became interested in the problems of coastal Gujarat when she was sent to the region to cover a story on the erosion of traditional skills. First stop for Padma this time around is a meeting with Alka Palrecharawal, an expert on seawater contamination.
Alka, why is the problem of salinity so severe in Gujarat?
The Gujarat coast, and particularly the coast of Saurashtra and Kutch, is lined with two kinds of stones. One is gajbet and the other is limestone. Both these stones, as you can see, is very, very porous in nature. Sometimes actually the caverns are formed, 9 feet tall caverns are formed and a kilometre long. That way actually the penetration of seawater has happened from 7 to 12 kilometres on the coast of Saurashtra and Kutch in Gujarat.
2 years ago, with funds from the Aga Khan Foundation and the state government, Alka Rawal founded an action group to come up with practical solutions to the salinity problem. Fluent in the local language, Alka is the perfect guide for Hindi-speaking Padma. Agriculture is booming in Gujarat. According to India's National Bank for Rural Development, the state has witnessed a 12% growth in the farming sector in just 2 years. Increased production has meant increased demand for water, and according to a study by the Gujarat state government, for every cubic metre of fresh water taken from the ground, 40 cubic metres of seawater intrude. To gauge precisely the extent of the problem, Alka's Salinity Action Group runs a mobile water testing facility.
This test is regularly conducted by us. Actually, we see that the quality of water what people drink should be at least known to them. This is the water people drink. Let's test.
The results take about an hour to come through. Time enough for a saucer of hopefully salt-free tea.
The result is highly saline. It's around 6,000 ppm. ppm is parts per million in a liter of water. According to the World Health Organization, it should be around 500 ppm. But it is 12 times more So we are just in the fully saline zone, and this is not drinkable water.
A government report of 2004 concluded that over 1,500 villages in coastal Gujarat, around 45% of the total, no longer have access to drinkable water. Before this hand pump was built 4 years ago, these women had no choice but to drink the dangerously salty water in their own wells.
They have skin rashes, graying of hair, maybe some falling of hair also, and rashes all over the body. And of course, kidney stones, which are the major problems because of bathing or consuming the high salt content water here.
Local health charities estimate that 12% of Gujaratis suffer from kidney stones, and they don't take long to develop.
This child's name is Gopal. He told his cousin to take him to the doctor, and they went to the doctor, and such a big stone was found in his kidneys.
Salinity has turned fresh or sweet water into a valuable commodity.
Rambhai and Vicky Bain are basically carrying this water to a fishing village. Members of the fishing village will pay him about 250 rupees for a can of 50 litres, which is provided daily. That is 250 rupees per month, and they get a can of 50 litres a day.
Curiously enough, communities living next to the sea aren't always the worst affected. The region's complex geology throws up many anomalies.
This is the only sweet water well in an area of at least about 2 to 2.5 kilometers. The ironic thing is that the only sweet water well in this area is right on the beach. And they do have wells in their own fields, but that water has long turned saline.
Households have contributed to the rising demand for groundwater. So too have industries such as limestone quarrying and cement making. But the biggest culprit by far is agriculture. The Green Revolution of the 1960s turned India from a famine-prone country into one of the world's major food exporters. That agricultural achievement was made possible in part by a huge increase in groundwater pumping. In the mid-1950s, fewer than 100,000 mechanized pumps were extracting groundwater for farming in India. Today, there are reportedly 20 million. This exponential increase in extraction rates means that ancient supplies never before tapped are being sucked dry. Today's farmers are feeling the consequences.
This is Keshubhai's farm, and it's amazing how this man has managed to survive despite not having sweet water in his land. About 22 years back, when he dug his well, he found that there was only salt water in it. But this problem of salinity has actually reduced his income by almost 2/3, a problem that is seen in many other places.
Places like Jeevabai's coconut farm. These coconut trees look healthy enough, but appearances can be deceptive.
Before my well went saline, each of my trees would produce around 50 coconuts. Now the average is 20 to 30, so my production has halved.
The coconut taste itself is saline.
Yes,
because
I noticed that. Yeah,
you could notice that, yeah. So that is what he mentioned, that in some of the varieties, the salinity in coconut comes faster, and in others it is slower, but it does come.
If taste matters in the coconut market, so too does size.
This coconut was grown here, which is a saline area, whereas this coconut was brought from a neighbouring sweetwater area. As you can see, they're both different in size. This would fetch only 2 rupees in the market, and this would get the farmer 4 rupees.
See, the whole point is to grow any other crop, he'll have to remove these coconuts. And if he removes the coconuts, he will have to wait for 5 to 6 years for land to be again ready for another crop, because the roots of the coconut are very deep inside.
As profits plummet, some farmers are looking for alternative livelihoods.
If the salinity levels goes high because of less rainfall and a drought here, then people would abandon the land. That would result in beginning of desertification, and eventually because of loss of income, large number of people would migrate to cities, and there would be social and cultural problems. Like I remember instances where young men were not finding bride because they were staying in saline areas.
Really?
Yeah, the hardship of women was so much that people are not ready to give their daughters in saline areas.
We've been talking about the problems of salinity and how it affects the livelihoods of people along the Gujarat coast, especially the farmers. Yet what we're seeing here is lush green fields. How do you explain that?
This is result of many efforts which are done by organizations, people, community themselves and the government. You can see farmers here. The water in the well is more because of this, because the water which is collected here is diverted into the well and which is used to make it green in this season.
To address the economic, health and social problems caused by increased salinity in groundwater, a variety of interventions are being tested, some of which are already having a positive impact.
In part 2, we look at what is being done to stop further salt contamination and ask if this will be enough to prevent Gujarat's farms from turning into salt pans. In the Indian state of Gujarat, fields are being poisoned by salt water. The state government estimates that along 2/3 of Gujarat's 1,600-kilometre coastline, farmland is turning saline at the rate of half a kilometre a year. But there's a fast-growing awareness in the state that the salt incursion must be stopped, in part by making better use of rainwater. This is Gir Forest, where the 7 major rivers feeding the Gujarati coastal settlements originate. Famous as the last refuge of the Asian lion, it's also a vital watershed.
The ecosystem of this forest provides environmental services to the Gujarat region, helping to recharge the water table and reduce the salinity problem on the southern coast. It's also the home to the last Asian lions in the wild. Hunted to the brink of extinction in the 19th century, their population is today happily rising. The last census, taken in 2005, recorded 359 lions.
Don't waste water. Wake up to the problem of saline water, these women are shouting. In poor households, women are responsible for fetching their family's drinking water. With this task getting harder every day, women are leading a grassroots campaign against water wastage. It's exactly this kind of consciousness raising that has galvanized communities into taking, quite literally, concrete action.
Here we are inside what is one of the most critically needed and the most successful intervention for dealing with salinity. This is a roof rainwater harvesting tank, and it collects about 20,000 litres of water. Families in this region have been adopting roof rainwater harvesting techniques simply because the salinity levels have been rising dramatically. Roof rainwater harvesting started off as a pilot project by the Aga Khan Development Network to help the poorer sections of the population. But now it has taken on a life of its own.
To date, some 5,000 tanks have been installed in saline areas, each one holding 20,000 litres of rainwater, enough to last a household for 4 months. But households use just 5% of the available fresh water in Gujarat. Agriculture accounts for a staggering 89%, according to the state government. So the main burden of responsibility for reducing water consumption falls on farmers.
Farmers are, they realize, they won't deny the fact that they've extracted the groundwater for their livelihoods needs, and it is one of the reasons why they've reached the situation they have, and they take responsibility for it. And if you work on that angle, and then I think there is hope. There is definitely hope. I mean, we've seen lots of ingenious solutions come up by farmers in which they've tried to address this problem.
One ingenious solution is drip irrigation. The technology began in China around 2,000 years ago and has been successfully applied from California to Israel. Now that the seasonal monsoons do not provide enough water to sustain the increases in crop production, Gujarati farmers are starting to see its virtues. It's estimated that some 1,500 farmers have adopted this economical technology. This betel leaf farmer previously used wasteful flood irrigation. But for the last 2 seasons, he's achieved good quality harvests of this popular cash crop through the drip method.
Flood irrigation is very labour intensive. With this system, I don't have to get up at night to change the direction of water which is flowing in. I just switch on the drip and go to sleep.
In terms of yields, what he's saying is that the quality of leaves have become better, one. The yield itself may not have increased in terms of quantity, but the input in terms of labour and fertilizer has reduced. So his net profit has increased considerably.
Okay.
In 2006, the state government set aside 1,000 million rupees, about $22 million US, to introduce drip irrigation to 16,000 hectares of farmland. Another simple yet effective technique is well sealing, which physically separates the sweet water from the saline. Around 150 farmers have taken up this method so far.
Padma, this is a well which has been sealed. The sealing has happened at around 40 feet. A slab has been put so that the upper layer of sweet water which is available in the aquifer is separated from the lower layer which is saline. By doing this, the farmer gets sweet usable water for around 10 to 12 feet.
Farmers are also beginning to move away from water-guzzling crops such as wheat and the worst offender, cotton, to those such as sorghum and groundnuts that require less water. But these salt-tolerant crops also yield less money, so there's a new emphasis on catching and storing water.
This is a percolation tank. The purpose of the percolation tank is to collect rainwater and store it so that it gets recharged, and the surrounding wells and hand pumps has better level of water.
Isn't there a likelihood that people in the village would come and directly take water?
There is an understanding between the communities and us that whatever structures we prepare for recharge, they do not lift water straight away. It's allowed to get recharged, and after that they use it when it comes to their wells.
When complete, this tank will help to supply fresh water to villages within 5 kilometres. On an even bigger scale, state government projects like this tidal regulator have been constructed along the Gujarat coastline to prevent saline water from contaminating rivers.
समुद्र में जाने से भी रोकता है ना? हाँ, दो तरफ से ये पानी यहाँ collect होता है और हाँ. So this works in 2 ways. It first stops the sweet water from going out into the sea, but most importantly, it stops the tides bringing in salt water into the river. Now this particular area which has the sweet water then gets recharged, and the local people are also allowed to pump the water out of this catchment area.
With government charges.
Yeah, and the government charges them a fee for taking the water out of this area.
Among other measures to combat salinity, the government of Gujarat is currently building 271 large dams in 21 rivers across the state. But the government says it cannot tackle the problem alone.
Fighting salinity is not the only issue for the government. Government can create reservoirs and storage tanks and anything, but proper use and economic use of this water and proper selection of crop is required in this area, and that is only by involving community and farmers.
Padma's journey through Gujarat has convinced her that salinity can be beaten. She believes Gujaratis can blaze a trail, showing India and the world that increasing food production and water conservation can go hand in hand.
The Gujarati is bringing the full force of his personality in tackling the problem of salinity increase. You see his flair for entrepreneurship here, you see the large-scale use of cooperative movements, and of course the richness of his culture. There are rich farmers who have seen commercial sense in managing water sources effectively. Then you have poor farmers who have gotten together and realized that it is beneficial for them to have self-regulation and to create communal resources of water. And of course, you see the vibrant theatre, dance and music in the awareness programs that the villagers themselves adopt in spreading the knowledge, the benefits of conserving water and managing water effectively. What makes you so passionate about this subject?
The very fact that actually it's a human-made problem. It's because of over-extraction of water by man. And they themselves, if they understand this and try to do something about reducing use of water, then only it can be mitigated. But that kind of understanding has to come. The unawareness is actually increasing the problem. But that kind of gap has to be fulfilled in an urgent manner, because actually it's rapidly increasing and we're just not realizing about it.
Farmers are largely what we call, they believe what they see rather than what they hear. They used to hearing so much what you call preaching and advice from others that they become slightly cynical about just talk. But if they see something on the ground, then they are open enough to try and adopt the ideas. So I think the community, I think, is beginning to listen.
The issue of water management on a global scale can no longer be ignored. To conserve water is to preserve life. The message from Gujarat is that we all need to act together, backed by legislation, to change our attitudes and behavior. By using modern techniques and age-old know-how, it may still be possible to hold back the desert.
Don't miss out on your favourite programmes. Find out what's on and when by visiting bbcworld.com.